So I've been thinking a lot about the setting of the world of Metaphor ReFantazio, and because the game is quite literally called Metaphor, I have to wonder, what is the United Kingdom of Euchronia a metaphor for? So in a previous video that I have up on the channel, we talked about the word Euchronia, that the United Kingdom of Euchronia is derived from. And Euchronia is defined as being a genre of speculative fiction that reimagines historical events going in new and imaginary directions. And I don't think that this name was just kind of chosen on a whim. I think it was very intentional by the developers that this world would be something that sprung from historical events that went in new, fantastical, and fantasy kinds of directions. So that made me wonder, what could have spurred the events of Metaphor ReFantazio? And so to understand that, I think we first need to understand what magic, Magla, and Melancholia are in this world. So, to keep it brief, Magla is the manifestation of the people of Euchronia's fears and anxieties in the real world. And not everyone can see these little Magla crystals floating throughout the world. Even though we as the players can, only fairies and the people of the Mustari tribe can actually see them, unless they're made manifest in something else. And it's this crystallization of Magla that makes it usable as a tool or an energy source or something along those lines. Crystallized Magla can create things like igniters, which can allow people to use combat magic. It helps fuel things like gauntlet runners. Essentially, this is the energy of the world. Now, Magla, in its raw form, can be changed into two separate things. It can be changed into either magic or melancholia. Now, magic is the positive use of Magla. If an individual is able to face their fears and anxieties, they are able to produce unassisted magic. Essentially, you don't need igniters anymore to produce magic, and that's what produces things like archetypes. Melancholia, however, is the toxic, poisonous form of Magla, and that is what people like Luis are able to use to create humans. Now, Melancholia doesn't exclusively create humans. A lot of times it can attract monsters, or it is a sharp, uncontrollable outburst of Magla from an individual that could cause harm to others, right? And so understanding that Melancholia is the damaging, toxic form of Magla that can, in high doses, produce humans, and magic is the more positive, pro-social use of Magla, helps us to be able to understand how there is kind of a spectrum of Magla, from pro-social to harmful, and everything kind of in the middle, which could kind of go either way, like igniters. The reason this is important to understand is because if we were to draw a real-world parallel to magic, it would be to radiation. So if we think about it, Magla in the United Kingdom of Euchronia is absolutely everywhere. So to the untrained eye, that's great, it's everywhere, but you can't really see it. Just like in our real world, radiation is everywhere, bombarding us at all times. But because we can't see it, we don't really think about that too much, because it's not having an overtly adverse effect on our lives, or really an overtly positive effect on our lives. However, it could. For example, with radiation, we have been able to create very convenient tools to utilize this radiation, whether it be microwaves just to heat up our food, x-rays to make sure that we can see broken bones, and so on and so forth, right? We have also found very damaging ways to use radiation, like nuclear weapons. You know, nuclear waste can irradiate certain areas, and what that radiation could do, again, in an unseen kind of way, if you are pumped with too much radiation, then you could start to mutate. It's interesting because if you start to mutate, then your cells and your genetic makeup might start changing. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to turn into an X-Man in the real world, right? But there can be some genetic changes to you if you are pumped too full of radiation. It can be harmful and potentially even lethal. If we think about what Luis is doing to the people of the United Kingdom of Euchronia. He's turning people into humans. He has taken a bastardized version of his parents, who were part of the Elder Tribes, healing magic, and he has turned that into magic that can instead produce Melancholia. And if he pumps people with enough of that Melancholia, they mutate and become humans. All right, so with that in mind, those are kind of a really broad strokes overview on how Magla could be considered a metaphor for radiation. And so if we go back to this idea of where did history diverge to create the United Kingdom of Euchronia, well, I think that it's very possible that instead of there being a nuclear arms race in the real world, with the advent of Magla, the fears and anxieties of the people bubbling up to the surface, the thing that destroys the world are dragons, which they say in this game, dragons are the pure manifestation of Magla, given sentient form. I feel like it's pretty safe to say that these could be a metaphor for nuclear weapons. These are the things built from the fears and anxieties of the people of the real world, made manifest, and then they are the things that burn down the world of mankind. And then once the world of mankind was burned down, then the people who remained slowly mutated or were exposed to Magla enough that they became the 8 tribes that we know today, except for the Elder Tribe, who maintain those more inherently human characteristics. And so really, if we compare the dawn of the dragons and the dragons destroying the world to a nuclear holocaust, then we could say this is how the world of Euchronia was able to be created. And so it could be thought of that the world of Euchronia, which is quite literally built upon the ashes of the old world, could almost be considered like a fallout kind of situation. But instead of it being actual nuclear weapons, it being the fallout of magic. The anxieties, the fears, and the hubris of mankind destroyed the world themselves, and in the wake of it, life was able to survive, albeit in a very different kind of way. But the ramifications of those events and the Magla that had been generated from those events were able to last far into the new world. And so if we start thinking about where in history this might have diverged, I can't say for absolute certainty, and if you can, I definitely want to keep playing the game to see if I can find any hints as to when it might be that are more specific, but I think that it could be thought that it may have diverged from the Cold War, which was also, everyone's thumb was on the button of nuclear weapons, but instead of things occurring like they actually did in the Cold War, maybe the world was instead plunged into that chaos, because there was a lot of fear and anxiety generated from the mistrust of others through the Cold War, and that permeated globally as well, and could have been catastrophic. And so maybe instead of things turning out the way that they did, maybe in this world of metaphor, things took a much more destructive path. And so that is my idea of what the United Kingdom of Euchronia is a metaphor for. I believe that it is essentially the byproduct of nuclear fallout, but instead of calling it radiation or nuclear energy, you can just call it Magla, magic, and Melancholia. And in turn, it shows how the peoples of this world were able to mutate and adapt to be able to live in this new environment, and how they can still see the ripple effects of the past interacting with the world today, for good and for bad, despite this world being built on the ashes of the quote-unquote real world, which they now view as a utopia, because everything, I guess, can be viewed with rose-tinted glasses. So let me know if you think that this idea is insane. Let me know if you agree with it. Let me know if you have any other thoughts, whether it's opposing or supporting this idea. And as always, if you like this kind of content, you want to see more of it coming from this channel, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and why even ring that notification bell so you never miss another upload. And if you want to follow me where I spend most of my time on social media, go follow me on Blue Sky. Link to that profile will be in the description down below. And as always, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, a fantastic rest of your week, and why even a fantastic rest of your month. And I will see you in the next video. Later.